Welcome to Rail Tales. I'm Dr. Linda Bond and I'm at the Railway Museum in San Angelo. I'd like to welcome you to the museum, but I want to remind you it's not open yet. You can't get inside. And if you do come outside, if you want to take a picture, be sure that you know that those are live train tracks outside. That means that trains actually go through here, so you have to be very careful. Today we're going to talk about Thomas the Tank Engine. Now, Thomas was an engine that pushed and pulled other trains, but trucks are some of the things that he had to push or pull. And trucks, not like the trucks we have here in town, they're flat cars on a railroad, and Thomas has to push them or pull them. So this is the story of Thomas and the trucks. Thomas used to grumble in the shed at night. "I'm tired of pushing coaches. I want to see the world." The others didn't take much notice, for Thomas was a little engine with a long tongue. But one night, Edward came to the shed. He was a kind little engine, and he felt sorry for Thomas. "I have some trucks to take home tomorrow," he said. "If you take them instead, I'll push coaches in the yard." "Thank you," said Thomas. "That would be very nice." So they asked their drivers next morning, and when they said yes, Thomas ran happily to find the trucks. Now, trucks are silly and noisy. They talk a lot and don't attend to what they're doing. They don't listen to their engine, and when he stops, they bump into each other screaming, "Oh, oh, 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 whatever is happening?" And I'm sorry to say, they play tricks on an engine who's not used to them. Edward knew all about the tricks. He warned Thomas to be careful, but Thomas was too excited to listen. The shunter fastened the coupling, and when the signal dropped, Thomas was ready. The guard blew his whistle. "Peep, peep," answered Thomas and started off. But the trucks weren't ready. "Oh, oh, oh, oh," they screamed as their couplings tightened. "Wait, Thomas, wait!" But Thomas couldn't wait. Come on," he puffed, and the trucks grumbled slowly onto the siding to the main line. Thomas was happy. Come along," he puffed. "All right, don't fuss. All right, don't fuss," grumbled the trucks. They clattered through stations and rumbled over bridges. Thomas whistled beep, beep as they rushed through the tunnel in which Henry had been shut up. Then they came to the top of the hill where Gordon had been stuck. "Steady now, steady," warned the driver, and he shut off steam and began to put on the brakes. We're stopping, called Thomas. "No, no, no, no," yelled the trucks, and bumped into each other. Go on." And before his driver could stop them, they had pushed Thomas down the hill and were rattling and laughing behind him. Poor Thomas tried hard to stop them from making him go too fast. Stop pushing," but the trucks would not stop. Go on," they giggled in their silly way. He was glad when they got to the bottom. Then he saw in front the place where they had to stop. "Oh dear, what shall I do?" They rattled through the station, and luckily the line was clear as they swerved into the goods yard. "Oh!" groaned Thomas as his brakes held fast and he skidded along the trains. "I must stop," and he shut his eyes tight. When he opened his eyes, he saw he had stopped right in front of the buffers, and there watching him was the fat director. "What are you doing here, Thomas?" he said sternly. "I've brought Edward's trucks." "Why did you come in so fast?" "I didn't mean to. I was pushed." "Haven't you pulled trucks before?" "No." "Then you've got a lot to learn about trucks, little Thomas. They are silly things and must be kept in their place. After pushing them around here for a few weeks, you'll know almost as much about them as Edward. Then you'll be a really useful engine." Thank you for joining me at Rail Tales. See you next time. Hello, I'm Dr. Linda Bond, and I'm at the Railway Museum in San Angelo. And I know you're going to be excited to know that the museum is open again. This is the new entrance, so come on and see the Railway Museum. Learn about trains. We're reading Thomas and the Tank Engine, the original book. And this, I'm going to read you a new part today that we haven't even talked about. In this, you remember, it was written by a man he was telling stories to his little boy. And after a while of hearing lots of stories about Thomas, he wanted to hear something else. So this is James the Red Engine. And the father says, "Dear friend of Edward, Gordon, Henry, and Thomas, thank you for your kind letters. Here's a new book, and I hope you like it. James, who crashed into the story in Thomas the Tank Engine, settles down and becomes a useful engine." This story is called James and the Top Hat. James was a new engine who lived at the station at the other end of the line. He had 2 small wheels in front and 6 driving wheels behind. They weren't as big as Gordon's, but they weren't as small as Thomas's. "You're a special mixed traffic engine," said the fat comptroller. "You'll be able to pull coaches or trucks quite easily." I forgot to mention to you, the fat director has been promoted now, and he's moved up to being the controller. But trucks were not easy things to manage, and on his first day they had pushed him down a hill into a field. He had been ill at the accident, but now he had new brakes and a shining coat of red paint. "The red paint will cheer you up after the accident," said the fat controller kindly. "You are to pull coaches today, and Edward will help you." They went together to find the coaches. "Be careful with the coaches, James," said Edward. "They don't like being bumped. Trucks are silly and noisy. They need to be bumped and taught to behave, but coaches get very cross and they will pay you out." They took the coaches to the platform and were both coupled onto the front. The fat controller, the station master, and some little boys all came to admire James' shining rods and red paint. James was pleased. "I'm a really splendid engine," he thought, and suddenly let off steam. Whee! The fat controller, the station manager, and the guard all jumped, and a shower of water fell on the fat controller's nice new top hat. Just then the whistle blew, and James thought they had better go, so they went. Go on," he puffed to Edward. Don't push," said Edward, for he did not like starting quickly. Don't go so fast, grumbled the coaches. But James did not listen. He wanted to run away before the fat controller could call him back. He didn't even want to stop at the first station. Edward tried hard to stop, but the 2 coaches in front were beyond the platform before they stopped, and they had to go back to let the passengers get out. Lots of people came to look at James, and as no one seemed to know about the fat controller's top hat, James felt happier. Presently they came to the junction where Thomas was waiting with his 2 coaches. "Hello, James," said Thomas kindly. "Feeling better?" "That's right. That's my guard's whistle. I gotta go. Sorry I can't stop. I don't know what the fat controller would do without me to run the branch line," and off he went. Leaving the junction, they passed the field where James had had his accident. The fence was mended and the cows were back again. James whistled, but they paid no attention. They clattered through Edward's station yard and started to climb the hill beyond. "It's ever so steep, puffed James. I've done it before, puffed Edwards. "It's steep, but we'll do it. We do it. It's steep, but we'll do it," puffed the 2 engines together as they pulled the train up the long hill. They both rested at the next station. Edward told James how Gordon had stuck on the hill and he had to push him up. James laughed so much that he got hiccups and surprised an old lady in a black bonnet. She dropped all her parcels, and 3 porters, the station master, and the guard had to run after her picking them up. James was quiet in the shed that night. He had enjoyed his day, but he was a little afraid of what the fat controller would say about his top hat. I'm so excited that the Railway Museum in San Angelo is open. I know you're going to enjoy coming in through the new entrance. Come in on Saturdays and visit. Welcome back. I'm Dr. Linda Bond, and I'm going to read a story at the Railway Museum in San Angelo. You know, right now, because of quarantine and the pandemic of 2020, the Railway Museum is closed. You can come and look at the outside of it, and we know that a lot of people have been doing that. But I have to tell you one very, very important thing. The tracks are live. That means that real trains are still coming in and out of the railway station. So you must stay 4 feet away from the tracks. Don't get on the tracks and take pictures because there could be a real train that would come through. So I just wanted you to know that. And fairly soon, the Railway Museum will open up and you can be inside again. I've been reading you stories about Thomas the Tank Engine, and there's something I wanted to explain before I read this one. The stories were written in England, and the way they talk is a little bit different. And in fact, the way trains have changed and become different is different also. This story talks about trucks. And when they say trucks, they're not talking about the kind of truck that's parked in your driveway that your dad or your mom drives. That's not the kind of truck. This is a flat truck that is a part of a train, and it has wheels, but it doesn't have an engine. So when you hear about trucks today, you'll know what that means. This is called Thomas and the Breakdown Train. Every day the fat director came to the station to catch his train, and he always said hello to Thomas. There were lots of trucks in the yard. Different ones came in every day, and Thomas had to push and pull them into their right places. He worked hard. He knew now that he wasn't so clever as he had thought. Besides, the fat director had been kind to him, and he wanted to learn all about the trucks to be a really useful engine. But on a siding by themselves were some trucks that Thomas was told he mustn't touch. There was a small coach, some flat trucks, and 2 strange things his driver called cranes. "That's the breakdown train," he said. "When there's an accident, the workmen get into the coach and the engine takes them quickly to help the hurt people and to clear and mend the lines. The cranes are for lifting heavy things like engines and coaches and trucks." One day, Thomas was in the yard when he heard an engine whistling, "Help! Help!" And a goods train came rushing through much too fast. The engine, a new one called James, was frightened. His brake blocks were on fire, and sparks and steam came out of each side. "They're pushing me," he said, "they're pushing me." On, laughed the trucks, and they were all whistling. "Help, help," said poor James, disappearing under a bridge. "I'd like to teach those trucks a lesson," said Thomas the Tank Engine. Presently, a bell rang in the signal box, and a man came running. "James is off the line! The breakdown train! Quickly!" he shouted. So Thomas was coupled on. The workmen jumped into their coach, and off they went. Thomas worked his hardest. "Hurry, hurry, hurry," he puffed, and this time he wasn't pretending to be like Gordon. He really meant it. "Bother those trucks and their tricks," he thought. "I hope poor James isn't hurt." They found James and the trucks at a bend in the line. The brake van and the last few trucks were on the rails, but the front ones were piled in a heap. James was in a field with a cow looking at him, and his driver and fireman were fueling him all over to see if he was hurt. "Never mind, James," they said. "It wasn't your fault. It was those wooden brakes they gave you. We always said they were no good." Thomas pushed the breakdown train alongside. Then he pulled the unhurt trucks out of the way. Oh dear, they groaned. "Serves you right," said Thomas. "Serves you right." When the men pulled other trucks on the line, he pulled them away too. He was hard at work, puffing backwards and forwards all the afternoon. "That'll teach you a lesson, that'll teach you a lesson," he said. And they answered, "Yes, it will, yes, it will," in a sad, groany, creaky kind of voice. They left the broken trucks and mended the line. Then with 2 cranes, they put James back on the rails. He tried to move, but he couldn't, so Thomas helped him back to the shed. The fat director was waiting anxiously for them. "Well, Thomas," he said kindly, "I've heard all about it, and I'm very pleased with you. You're a really useful engine." James would have had some proper brakes and a new coat of paint, and you shall have a branch line all to yourself. "Oh, sir," said Thomas. Now Thomas is as happy as he can be. He has a branch line all to himself and puffs proudly backwards and forwards with 2 coaches all day. He's never lonely because there are always some engine to talk to in the junction. Edward and Henry stop quite often to tell him the news. Gordon is always in a hurry and does not stop, but he never forgets to say boop, boop. And little Thomas whistles back beep, beep in return. Thank you for joining us to hear some more stories at the railway station in San Angelo.